Hello viewers, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ron Grant. You're watching 284 Media out of course, the beautiful British Virgin Islands and nature's little secrets. Recently, Leader of the Opposition, Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, that is in District 8 Representative, the Honourable Marlon A. Penn, made a statement on the present state of affairs as it pertains to business and the economy here in the Virgin Islands. Now, as we here in the VI seek to maneuver the very fluid pandemic, that is of course COVID-19, we are today joined by Opposition Leader, the Honourable Marlon A. Penn, to discuss his take on the present state of affairs relating to business and the economy here in the British Virgin Islands. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. You're watching 284 Media. Is business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media@cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works. Viewers, welcome back. You're watching 284 Media. Honourable Marlon A. Penn, welcome to 284 Media. Thank you for accepting our invitation this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ron. Thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon to the listening public on 284 Media on Facebook Live.
You're most welcome. Now let's get into the meat of the matter. As stated earlier, you recently published a statement detailing your thoughts on the present state of affairs as it particularly pertains to the business community and the economy here in the Virgin Islands amidst, of course, COVID-19. Let's get right into it. When we look at our small business community, tell us your thoughts as it pertains to the statement you released on the small business livelihood here in the Virgin Islands.
Yes, again, thank you, Ron. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the people of the territory on this very important issue. As you know, Ron, the COVID-19 pandemic is a fluid situation. It's something that we in the Virgin Islands have been grappling with along with all countries globally. And it has put a significant strain, more particularly on small businesses throughout the global economy. As you know, small businesses are the drivers of our economy, and we have to ensure that they're maintained to ensure they keep businesses running and keep the livelihood of persons intact. As you know, we had an initial shutdown in March of this year, and that has taken a toll on the business sector in this territory, especially the tourism sector, which has been closed since March. We have many businesses who've been struggling to maintain their operations. The ones who were allowed to open been unable to keep their complement of staff. They've been paying staff at quarter salary in some instances, and it's created significant strain on their businesses. One of the things that we put out in the 18th of May was a suggestion to the government in terms of economic strategic plan and economic vision for moving the country forward in the lights of COVID-19. Later on, the government made their announcement of their economic plan, which was on May 28th, and it outlined some benefits for small businesses, which we already suggested in our plan. The unfortunate thing, Ron, is 6 months later, from since the announcement of their plan, about 3 months later, businesses have not gotten that relief in terms of small businesses, and a lot of those businesses are struggling. I've gotten calls from business owners who are saying, look, we cannot continue to carry this weight. It's very difficult on us. We've been trying to keep our employees going, but it's putting a strain on our businesses. You have employees who are struggling, who haven't gotten a salary for 6 months. They've been trying to get support from the income support program. Many of them have been unable to get that support, and it's a continuous strain on the economy. One of the things that I've been continually saying, Ron, is that in the face of COVID-19, as a territory, as a people, we have to learn how to coexist with COVID-19. So we have to develop a strategy and a plan to ensure that we, as a territory, the businesses and the public can coexist with COVID-19, because we cannot continue to shut down the territory every time we get cases of COVID-19. We've yet to see a comprehensive plan that addresses the economic side of this pandemic, which is, I believe, is the most devastating side of this pandemic. While we agree that the health aspect of it is quite very important, and we suggested to ensure that we have health security, health protocols put in place to ensure that we protect not just persons on the ground, but protect our visitors and persons who, when we decide is the right time to open up the economy, that those things are in place to protect the citizens and the visitors coming to the territory. We've seen around the region where nations and countries and persons around us have already put these things in place to ensure that they protect lives and livelihoods of their people. Because once we protect their life, we have to ensure that we maintain their livelihoods, because a lot of persons are extremely devastated. Their businesses are devastated, their livelihoods. Persons are wondering how they can get the next meal on their table. I actually got a call today, on a text, from someone who said that this shutdown now has forced their job to send them home for 2 weeks without pay. So they're home now, they were already working reduced hours, and now they have to now go home without pay and don't know where the next meal would come from, where they're going to get funds to pay their rent. So we have to make sure that the support that we promise to the businesses, support that we promise to the individuals, gets to them in a timely manner. The situation is fluid, and the usual bureaucracy does not apply in this case. We have to be more efficient in getting that support to persons who really need that support at this time.
Honourable Minister, there are a couple of things that we have to look at, not only for the business community, but we're going to start with them. You mentioned about persons messaging you. As we have heard the concerns, the cries, but not only individuals, but businesses who continue to say, we're trying to put the protocols in place, we're spending money to put the measures in place, and then we continuously get to shut down. What should we exactly be paying more attention to as it pertains to the small business community? That's one. Are you fearful that the small business community in the Virgin Islands is at risk of essentially collapsing?
Yeah, yes, I'm fearful, Ron, and I think the key thing is to have the particular dialogue with the business community. I know the Hotel and Commerce Association has been trying to reach out to the government to have that dialogue to ensure that whatever protocols are put in place, it is in concert with the business community. Okay. You cannot put policies in place if you don't involve the stakeholders, the ones who those policies impact the most. So we have a responsibility to ensure that all the stakeholders are around, at least most of them, as a body, the Hotel and Commerce Association can represent a majority of the stakeholders and their interests. They need to be around the table when the policy decisions are being made. Okay. We cannot make policies in a vacuum absent the stakeholders. So I want to encourage the government to ensure that the stakeholders are involved in that discussion process, to ensure that when they put these protocols in place, it's very clear what to expect. There's too much uncertainty right now as it relates to the economic side and what the plan is for the economic side, and we're not seeing a comprehensive plan as it relates to the economy of the Virgin Islands and how we're going to move forward and open up the economy, how we're going to move forward in ensuring that the businesses remain viable in this COVID-19 era.
Now, as we speak of small businesses, what exactly, we mentioned the stimulus package that many of them have not received. We mentioned having them more a part of the conversation when it comes to decision making, and perhaps including stakeholders like the BVICC-HA, who have made quite a number of suggestions to the government of the day as it pertains to how the business community can be assisted. But is there anything else that you would mention as it pertains to directly being of assistance, any key points for the small business community, as well as perhaps honestly just some encouragement to that community at this time?
I mean, quite frankly, Ron, I think we need to get the support to the businesses. They're really in dire need of that support right now. Many of those businesses are flat out right now. They don't have the funds to keep going. They have to pay their rents for their business environment. They have to, the infrastructure, some of them have been selling off their infrastructure because they can't afford to support the business and their own livelihood. It's a difficult time. I think there's some $6.5 million, which we all know is not enough support based on the issues that we're facing now with our small businesses. But at least let's start to get that support out to the businesses. I know that the process was closed a week or so ago, and there's a vetting process. We need to fast track that process to ensure that that support gets to the businesses as soon as possible. And for the businesses, I mean, it's a difficult time, I know, for many of you. I want to encourage you to continue to hang on. I know many of you have spent your life, your entire life building your enterprises and your businesses, and you're at risk of losing those businesses. I want to keep hope and keep pushing. I think I'm going to continue to be your voice and ensure that the requisite support gets to you and gets to your employees, and ensure that you continue to build your life and your livelihood that you've built over decades, some of you.
Honourable Minister, it's been just about 6 months. We mentioned that the entire conversation has really begun as it pertains to assistance and stimulus package. But recently, the Honourable Minister for Labour said that there's a lot of bureaucracy as it pertains to the benefits being received from the Social Security Board to whether it's the unemployed or underemployed. Exactly what is the issue? And explain it to Virgin Islanders from your perspective. What's the holdup as it pertains to their unemployment? Those who have applied, those who have received calls, employees have received calls that perhaps there was something with their application, or 1 minute they were not eligible and then they were. Speak to that situation.
Yeah, it's a major problem, Ron, and I know all 13 members have gotten calls on this issue. To the fact that we had a meeting just not so long ago with Social Security to sort of understand what is the problem, why are persons claiming that they're only getting $25 checks, why are persons being denied, and some of their staff members are getting support, those kind of issues. And what we found, and based on my assessment of the discussion that we had, is based on the process that was put in place. Like for instance, Ron, if I'm working for Ron Enterprises Inc. and I'm making $2,000 a month, and because of the slowdown with the economy and the pandemic, you aren't able to pay me my full $2,000 in salary. You decide, okay, well, I will carry you for a little while and half salary, $1,000 a month. So if I apply to Social Security for that support, income support and underemployment support, I wouldn't get any funds because based on the rules that were put in place, I've already reached the $1,000 threshold. It counts the $1,000 that the employer pays to the employee as reaching that threshold. So I wouldn't qualify based on the current rules.
Wow.
And those rules were rules that were put in place by the cabinet through the minister. And we saw where the Social Security Board wrote to the cabinet for approval on those rules and those principles. The step now is for the minister to recommend a change and a shift in those rules to ensure that more persons get support from that program. We made a series of suggestions as a House of Assembly to the minister in front of Social Security in terms of what we feel should happen to get more support to the employees who really need this support at this time. I don't know if it has gone forward to cabinet, but if not, we need to fast track that process to ensure that persons get the support that they need from this program. And the only person that can do that is the minister.
Of course.
The Social Security Board answers to the minister through cabinet. So it's not so much the bureaucracy of Social Security Board, it's a process that the minister and his team has put in place that has stymied the process. So we have to ensure that the minister puts forward the revised protocols for issuing payments to unemployed persons and ensure that those persons who were deemed not to qualify before, based on the change in protocol, would now have some type of qualification to get some support that they need because they really need it. Because making half of your salary versus the full, it means an additional strain on you and your family to support whether you have to pay your rent or buy food. You have to make those decisions and those sacrifices, whether you have to buy a computer for your kid for online learning. Those are the tough decisions that families are faced with on a daily basis with a reduced salary. And some of them don't have any salary for the last 6 to 7 months.
Essentially what we're seeing as it pertains to the business community, particularly the hospitality industry that would obviously have been affected, but the other side of the economy and other businesses ranging from different enterprises, we see where the closure or the continuous closure is what seems to be really grappling and putting a halt on businesses. This is not necessarily about the fact that our borders are still closed. Yes, that's affecting a certain demographic, but on an entire different basis, our local economy that we've thought to ourselves we would at least attempt until the borders are being open is essentially being stifled as well.
Yeah, we have an unfortunate cluster of cases now, Ron, that has happened just recently. For the last 2 weeks, we've jumped from 8 cases to some 60 some odd cases, which is almost a 700% increase in less than 2 weeks. And it speaks to the fact that we have to strengthen our health protocols, and I want to commend the government and the health officials for the work they were doing previously. They did a good job early on managing the crisis. I know it's very difficult and there's a strain on the limited resources that they have. But we have to be more efficient. We have to get efficient in terms of the process and figure out how can we put things in place to ensure that there's health security for people. In particularly, how can we include the private sector? How can we include the private doctors, the private clinics, and ensure that they support the process to help ease the burden off of the Health Services Authority and their personnel? So there needs to be that partnership right now in terms of how we could work collectively to address the situation. And the issue of testing, we have to figure out how can we bring comfort to the people of this territory. So if there are clusters in Huntington's, got clusters in East End and all over the place, we probably need to test those entire areas like we did at Jasper and Dyke, as we did in Anegada, to ensure that there's some certainty in what the numbers are like, and you bring some comfort to persons who are worried right now based on the numbers that were being thrown out in terms of how many cases that we have. You need to do more testing. And I take the example of Cayman, I take the example of Bermuda. Cayman has tested over 30,000 plus persons. Bermuda the same in the range of those numbers. Now Bermuda Cayman has fully opened their internal economy. Totally opened the economy because there's certainty in the current situation on the ground. That certainty brings comfort. It brings comfort not just to the persons on the ground, but it brings comfort to the business community, locally and regionally, to say that, look, this country is safe. They've done the testing. They have the protocols in place to keep themselves and their people safe, and to keep us safe as visitors when we start to travel to those countries. But those are the things that we need to do, and I think we need to do it in concert with the private sector. The government cannot do it all alone, and we need to look where the expertise lies and be able to have that level of partnership to make these things, put these things in place for our people.
Now, Minister Penn, you recently spoke about the clusters that has affected a lot of communities here in the Virgin Islands, including the members of the constituency that you are responsible for, East and Longlook, the 8th District particularly. Now, have you, since the inception of the announcement, been in contact with any of your constituents who may have been infected by the virus? And even if not, what's the general tone within the 8th District as it pertains to those initial clusters and the contact tracing as well?
I mean, I haven't been in contact with anyone specific, but I know there's a level of concern of persons within the community, rightfully so. If you're hearing that your community is one of the areas where clusters exist. One of the things I continue to do is preach to my constituents to continue to maintain the protocols that have been put in place by the Health Services Authority and health officials to ensure that we do the things to keep ourselves safe, keep our families safe, and keep our fellow brothers safe during this very difficult period. But I have to continue to say this, Ron. We have to find a way to learn to coexist with this virus. The solution cannot be whenever someone gets ill or someone gets infected that we shut down the entire economy and shut down the country. It does more harm to the business community and the economy, and it does more harm overall to the psyche of the people within the territory. It creates an emotional situation when persons think about being shut down and all the things that are associated with a shutdown. The fact that I'm going to be out of work, I'll be out of pay for another 2 weeks or another month. It really puts a strain on the populace. But we have to, like I said earlier, ensure that we maintain health security, put the necessary steps in place, and be consistent and be clear in articulating what is required of persons during this very difficult period. But we also have to look at how we're going to deal with the aspect of the economy. It's paramount. We have to, while we're saving lives, we have to ensure that we maintain the livelihood of our people as well, which is going to be critical for us transitioning out of this COVID-19 era.
Essentially, Honourable Member, in your statement, which has been made available to the general public, that section, and I quote, as you put it, taking stock of our finances and, of course, the economy. Now, recently, in a televised interview, Leader of Government Business, the Honourable Andrew Foy, stated that persons who keep echoing that his government does not have a plan for the territory during the COVID-19 pandemic are being somewhat deceitful. He said these persons are fully aware of how fluid the nature of COVID-19 is, and with that factor in mind, it is not his government's interest to prematurely release all the plans at once, since they are likely subject to change from COVID-19. Now, he said, and I quote, "We have a plan for the phase 2 with the persons coming in, whether work permit, etc. We had a plan that was projected for the 1st of November dealing with the economy, and we didn't even get to that out because we were going to bring that out just last week. Then everything started to unravel." He continued by saying the plans we had last week, we don't have this week. We had to readjust. The plans we had a week before, we had to readjust. The ultimate plan is very simple. We want to make sure that we reopen the borders eventually. We are aiming for the 1st of November. We had all our plans set up for that. Now those were the words of the Honourable Premier. And one word that stuck out to me in reading the statement was the word eventually. And I quote again, "The plans we had a week before, we had to readjust. The ultimate plan is very simple. We want to make sure that we reopen the borders eventually." Now, from your perspective as it pertains to this, and of course with this in mind, you and your fellow opposition members have continued to rally for a detailed and cohesive plan, which, if I am correct, you are yet to receive or be included in that process as an elected representative. Tell me your thoughts on those recent remarks.
Around those comments are unfortunate because that's the whole point of a plan. A plan is to have something that is fluid, and particularly in a fluid situation like COVID-19. businesses are something that cannot just act on a whim. Businesses have to plan their resources, they have to plan their infrastructural development, their human resource development, and they need time to do those things and put those things in place. So if you share with them what your thinking is and what your vision is for opening up the territory, what is required of them as a business to be able to facilitate whatever your health protocols are, then they could plan towards doing what they do best, is being a business and doing the things to drive the economy and drive the economic engine. The tourism sector, they need certainty. There's too much uncertainty right now, and a plan will bring certainty to the business community. It will bring certainty to the local population as well. And what the Premier put out just recently, based on our behest, they put out what is termed a pandemic plan, which is a 53-page document that doesn't really have a cohesive approach in terms of how we're going to address the economic issues. And the economic is going to be paramount enough for us moving forward. We need to have a clear plan in terms of how the government plans to open up the economy. And that plan needs to be made public to the populace, to the business, and to the the citizenry of this territory, so that we could understand what is the government's approach. How can we infuse our ideas into this plan? And the plan cannot be done in a vacuum. It has to be done with the collective thoughts and views of the business community. The Hotel and Commerce Association needs to be involved in that discussion. Persons in different sectors of the economy needs to be involved in that discussion, because what works for tourism might not work for construction. What works for construction might not work for the retail industry. So there are different facets of the economy that needs to feed into whatever plan that you have. And we need to ensure that that plan is made public urgently, because if we don't do it, we're going to pretty much lose the next season, because these companies have to build up their human resources. Just this weekend, I went to the airport and I was in the Trailers Bay area, and you saw plane loads of persons just leaving the territory. Those are human resources that these businesses need to continue to run their enterprises. The marine industry, a very critical industry to us in this territory. This industry, we're on the anniversary of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. That is the industry that drove our economy when we were flattened after Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And now you're hearing discussions that they're thinking about leaving and going to St. Thomas. Some of them already left and gone to the U.S. Virgin Islands. U.S. Virgin Islands have already adjusted their laws to be able to accommodate them coming down to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Are we going to give them an opportunity to take back our business from us? We have to ensure that we put things in place that these persons understand that there's certainty in what we're trying to do to get them back up and running. We don't see that certainty right now, and it's not a fight or argument between myself, my colleagues from the opposition, and the Premier. It's about, let's do what's in the best interest of the country overall. We need a plan. We need something that we could see, we could touch, we could feel. We all understand that the situation is fluid. It goes without saying, but that's what a plan is. It creates an opportunity, at least a roadmap for us to start to think towards what we need to do. And then we set clear timelines and guidelines in terms of how we're going to implement. We don't see that, and that is unfortunate the Premier will make those statements, because it scares me even more now, the fact that we don't have anything in place to get the economy going again.
Do words like eventually make you think that perhaps it could be longer than we anticipate, even more longer?
It makes me concerned, Ron, because it also makes the businesses concerned. That level of uncertainty scares businesses. Businesses don't have the ability to just burn money. And a lot of them right now are burning money. A lot of them are being good corporate citizens by trying to retain their employees as long as they can. They're losing money with these reduced hours. They're losing money.
Their bills.
Yeah, they barely could pay the light. I mean, some businesses have said to me, look, we start up at 5, at 6, and to shut down at 12, we're losing money. Just to start up our businesses is costing us a ton of money just to start up. One business called me and said, look, they call me my nickname. The person called me my nickname. He said, look, Smurf, we can't do this anymore. I've been carrying my staff for 6 months. I've been losing money. I can't afford to do this anymore. I need to understand what the government is doing with the economy. How are we going to move forward? These are the concerns about that businesses have, not just in all sectors of the economy, in the retail sector, in the charter boat industry, in the commercial sector, even in the financial services sector. There's some concerns as well. So we have to ensure that there's a cohesive cohesive plan and an approach of how we're going to manage the economy during this process. And the plan cannot be shutting down the economy every time there's an issue or every time somebody gets ill with COVID-19. We have to learn to coexist with COVID-19. And we even didn't touch the issue of food security, Ron.
Very important one.
And there's a serious concern in terms of how is the food supply globally, how are we managing it, how do we fit in the global landscape in terms of food security. We heard the discussion about monies were put in place to help farmers and fishermen. To my understanding, none of that money was disseminated as yet, and that was since April we heard about this. We need to take this thing seriously. We need to take the whole issue of food security extremely seriously, because we see what's happening in China right now with the floods and what's happening there with their crops. Persons are starving. That's going to create a ripple effect throughout the global economy in terms of food. What does that mean for the BVI? Are we even thinking about those issues? Those are real issues. Those are issues that we as a territory have to grapple with. And we need to have a plan to address those issues when they arise. But not to just, as they come, just act like helter-skelter and just be reactive to everything that happens. We have to be more proactive in our approach, Ron. And that's what I'm saying, that a plan allows you to be more proactive.
Honorable Minister, you just touched on the fact that it is actually the third year anniversary of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. Now, of course, those events of 2017, one was a natural disaster, and now we're facing a pandemic. From your vantage point, are there any similar lessons to be learned, even though they're different in situation? And the fact that we are now still in hurricane season, how prepared would you say we are for this season as a country?
There are lessons to learn. I think one of the lessons that we learned coming out of Hurricane Irma and Maria is that we're stronger when we work together. I think that's one of the key lessons that we need to take into this pandemic. We have to work collectively in the best interest of the Virgin Islands. And I'm going to continue, Ron, to speak on the issues because I believe it's important that me and my colleagues in opposition have a voice that we need to make sure that we lend our voice to the process to ensure that the people's perspective is heard in the public space. In terms of our preparedness for hurricanes coming down the stream, I am not certain how prepared we are, Ron. I'm concerned in terms of the shelters, where we are in terms of the shelters. I know there's some announcements were made on shelters. I have the community center in my community that's in disrepair. I've been pushing since we got back in office to ensure that got addressed. I don't think it's listed as a shelter anymore. But I'm concerned that persons are not aware in terms of where everything is. And I think we have to do a better job in terms of making sure that we put that information out there. I see that there's some systems that are threatening. God forbid, I hope that they go north and not impact any land, not even just our land, but any land at all, because with the difficulty that everyone globally is facing now with this pandemic, no one could deal with the additional stress of a hurricane and having to pick up your pieces after a hurricane. We know that too well after Hurricanes Irma and Maria, what we had to go through to rebuild our lives and rebuild our livelihoods. And the same is going to be true with this pandemic. More so than rebuilding our life, but more so rebuilding our livelihood, because if we don't get the economic side of this right, we'll have tarnished all our livelihoods in this territory. Our businesses who are struggling might not exist anymore, God forbid. But that is the reality, man. We cannot continue to sugarcoat what's happening right now on the ground for our business community. The persons in the marine industry, they're struggling. They've been closed for over 6 months, going on 7 months. These people have to maintain their life and their livelihood. It's not good enough to say they should have had 6 months emergency fund. How many people have a 6-month emergency fund? Imagine not getting a paycheck for the last 7 months. What that means, what toll that takes on your mental health and on your family life.
Of course.
So those are real issues that we need to really come out and figure out how to move forward. And we have to move forward with haste. We don't have the luxury of time right now. So we have to be very, very proactive. We have to be very strategic in our approach in ensuring that we involve all the stakeholders and ensure that our businesses get the support that they need and get that support now. And I'm going to continue to harp on that, Ron. If we have the funds there for the businesses, get it to them because they need it. If we have the funds there for persons who are unemployed, let's get it to them. They need it. We have to do our best. We have to continue to push because our people are going through a very difficult time right now. And I cry with my people, Ron, because I get the calls, I get the concerns, the texts, the WhatsApps, persons who never normally call me for help, and they're calling now because I know that they really need the help, and the concerns are real, and the pressures is real on persons in their lives and their families.
It's actually hard to believe as we move through and try our best to maneuver through this pandemic that the months are going by as quickly as they are. 6 months, 6 to 7 months for many persons being closed and out of work is by far a long stretch of a time. Recently, I have to go back to this, the Gambling and Betting Act 2020 was passed in the Virgin Islands. However, there seems to be some disparities between that act and, of course, the Money Laundering Act. Now, we have long been reliant on the financial services industry. Can you speak to how these two acts contradict each other? And maybe they don't, but if they do, what are some possible ramifications of us now having a Gambling and Betting Act along with a Money Laundering Act in the wake of the financial services industry that we're trying so hard, seemingly, to preserve?
Yes, Ron. We have what we call MLA legislation.
Yes.
Anti-money laundering and terrorist financing legislation has been on the books for some time in the BVI. And we now have the Gaming and Betting Act, which was passed into law just the other day. I'm not sure if it was assented to as yet, but the reality is, and one of the issues that I raised during the debate on this piece of legislation is that this piece of legislation kind of conflicts in terms of the theory behind AML and AML concerns, because proceeds from gambling typically are not they're not deposited in banks, and the financial services have always had concern with those issues being caught up in money laundering and terrorist financing. And one of the concerns that I raise is that we're going through a mutual evaluation which is scheduled for next year, 2021. I'm not sure it's going to continue based on what we're going through with the global pandemic. Hopefully we're in a better space during that time. But we want to ensure that once we're going through this evaluation, that we don't put things in place that creates a negative situation for us as a territory. The potential revenue, as I see it, Ron, it's a long-term game. It's a long game with the gambling situation. You cannot put these things in place and overnight. It takes some time. You have a situation where there's a commission that has to be established. We've yet to hear what is going on with this commission. Then we still have to do the situation of you need to put in place regulations. Regulations are necessary to govern how this Gaming and Betting Control Act will function. And it also speaks to how the commission would function. We're trying to gain, what, 10, 15, $20 million, let's say, for argument's sake, $20 million a year in revenue. That could potentially make us lose $180 million in revenue that we have currently from financial services, because if we get a bad evaluation because the structures are not set up yet for this particular piece of legislation. And the assessors are uneasy in terms of BVI's direction as it relates to gambling and how that's going to work, and they don't see the regulations behind how it will be, with the necessary oversight and things that are necessary. They could give us a bad evaluation. We could be blacklisted. That could have far-reaching implications for our financial services industry. These are things that we have to really be careful of. And you can't be a pound wise, a penny wise, a pound foolish. Yeah. And we have to make sure that you have a board in the hand that you need to cultivate and nurture, which is financial services. There's the issues of economic substance, that we've lost the opportunity to ensure that we put the things in place for economic substance. What Barbados has done with that year-long visa for persons to come and work in Barbados is essentially economic substance. They've already put a plan in place for economic substance amid COVID-19. We have to do those type of things to ensure that we have legislation in place to facilitate economic substance. But we're not doing the things that are necessary to ensure that those things are put in place so that we could strengthen our financial services industry as it is right now and create diversification within the existing industries. We have to look at how we get tourism going again.
So with this in mind, Honourable Penn, why do you think the Gambling and Betting Act 2020 was still moved forward to as it pertains to these particular concerns as it pertains to financial services? How did we get this far knowing what we know?
I don't know, Ron. Only the Premier and his cabinet and his members could speak to that, because they're the ones who voted for it. They're the ones who supported it. Those are the ones who brought it forward in the whim of the night. We learned about it. There was two, bam. It was on the paper for the House of Assembly for debate and for passage. The same thing with the Marijuana Act. You know, you have a board in the hand that is financial services that's been earning you $180 to $190 million annually, and you're going after two boards in the bush, marijuana and gambling. It's not wise. It's not wise at this time to rush those things through, especially when you have all the public outcry on these issues and the concerns that the public has raised.
And of course,
and
social
these two people are thinking, you're changing the social fabric of your territory at a whim when you implement medical marijuana and gambling at the same time? The only person who could answer that question, Ron, is the Premier.
All
And his
right.
team.
Now, I must touch on this, and if I'm not mistaken, our records would show that the beneficial ownership, as it pertains to the overseas territories, we are one of perhaps the only few who have not completed that process. What are your thoughts, and what's the holdup essentially?
I know we've always fought against beneficial ownership in terms of ensuring to preserve the integrity of the industry and the integrity of the persons who invest in the local economy. I don't know what the holdup is, but I know from the territory point of view, that's something that all of us on all sides of the aisle have said, no, we're not going to sign off on that.
Okay.
Once it becomes a global standard, then all of us will sign on it, because then you have a level playing field. You can't make the playing field unlevel in terms of putting certain standards for some, and certain persons have a different standard. That's not how a global economy should work.
Okay. Honourable Penn, as always, thank you for answering our call as we seek to clarify on the many issues that continue to arise. I'll allow you to close out with any remarks that you may have.
No, I just want to again thank you, Ron, for inviting me. I always look forward to coming here and having a conversation with you and the people of this territory, and more particularly the people of the 8th District, the people that I love that send me here every year, every term. They've sent me here for the last 3 terms to represent their interests, which I will continue to represent with vigor, with zeal, with integrity, and with honesty. Also have a responsibility now to represent the entire territory, and I'm going to speak and be a voice for all the people in this territory, the business community, persons who are now struggling with their small businesses, persons who are landlords who are struggling as well, and just persons overall who have been unemployed for some time, have been struggling. We need to get the support to those persons. We need to have the compassion for those persons who have been hurting for some time now. And I'm going to continue to fight and ensure that we get that support to them. Whatever support that I have at my disposal, I'm going to ensure that it gets out to the people in a timely manner. I'm going to continue to fight for them. At the end of the day, we have to get through this pandemic together, and the only way that we're going to get through this is that we work collectively as a government, as an opposition, and as a territory. And I want to make a plea to the government to continue to involve the business community in your policy decisions as it relates to the economy and how you're going to work with the economy. You cannot plan for the economy without the key stakeholders involved in that process. You have to ensure that they're involved in the process. Even if you don't want to talk to us in opposition, talk to the business community. Make sure that they have a say in whatever policies you put forward. And I want to again encourage all persons in the territory to stay strong, respect the health protocols that are put in place by the health professionals. I know they're working in your best interest. There's no other interest than the health and safety of the people of this territory. And I want to commend them for the work they do, continue to do to keep all of us safe. I want to encourage the government during this very difficult time to do your best. Listen, and let's have the more engagement in the process to ensure that all of us come out on the other side of this better off.
Thank you so much, Honourable Marlon Penn, Leader of the Opposition, and of course, District 8 Representative. Viewers, that's not quite it as yet. Of course, my colleague, Ms. Jovan Wilson, sat down with the Governor of the Virgin Islands, His Excellency Governor Augustus J.U. Jasper, to speak on the state of readiness for our present hurricane season 2020, and of course, the ever-concerning border protection and national security, for which falls essentially under his portfolio of the Virgin Islands. If you missed that exclusive, please visit our Facebook page and, of course, our website at 284 Media. Be sure to tune in this evening at 6 p.m. as Jovan and Kyla break down the most recent stories on the local, regional, and of course international scene, some of which include a recent raid by the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force and interception of illegal immigrants and illegal entry, not only at our borders, but in some of our places, actually in the capital of Road Town, as well as the rise in COVID-19 cases in the UK. Believe it or not, it's been 3 years since Hurricane Irma and Maria, and ladies, take a look at just how far we have come. Viewers, you've been watching 284 Media, your source for honest and impartial news here in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. Thank you so much. I'm Ron Grant. Happy Monday. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.